Hey, what's up, everybody? Today is April 14th, 2025, and I am here at Jay's Barbershop with Jay. What's going on, Jay?
That's right. Hey, what's up, man? How are you?
Good. This is the Dattie podcast, and this is one of my first in-person podcasts in Delaware. I've traveled to a few other places, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you, man. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
I've been at my shop for a couple years now. I think 2018 is when I put the deposit in, and I've moved twice over there. But I saw this empty. It used to be a 7-Eleven, and then I saw they were painting it black eventually about a year and a half ago. I'm like, what are they putting there? A Chipotle? And lo and behold, I told you this. It's probably the nicest barbershop that I've ever been to. I mean, this place is immaculate. I mean, the ceiling, the vinyl planks, the decorating. I love the posters. Everything's symmetrical. I love the lighting. How'd you kind of come up with that?
Well, first of all, thanks for noticing, because you're absolutely right. I put a lot of effort into this. And honestly, man, it is just a reflection. It just expresses my personal style. I looked at this place as almost like a blank canvas. Probably put a lot more into it than I had to, but I use it as an opportunity to express myself. So I think we did a good job with that.
You did a great job. And I mean, people will be more willing to pay for, let's just say the prices go up in haircuts. They're more likely to pay a higher price if they're at a nice facility, right? If it's run down, they're going to not be so much.
Absolutely. Not to mention, I just wanted to create a nice atmosphere for myself and my barbers. We spend a lot of time here, live here essentially. So it's just a nice place.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I like the open concept too. I like the open concept. No divider walls or anything like that. And the nice chairs, the waiting room. Yeah. I've been bringing my son here. I don't really get haircuts because I'm bald, obviously. But I do get my beard trim. I treat myself, a couple times a year. And I've got my beard trimmed here that did great jobs. And then you guys do a great job on my son's haircut.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We enjoy having you.
Let me ask you this. As a barber, does it bother you that I don't taper my beard all the way down here? A lot of people do that. They taper their beard all the way down.
So it's funny you say that. To answer your question, yes. Only because that's something, like you said, as barbers, we look at, the fade. But to your point, if it is something that is intended, if it's something that's intended, you intended to do, that's your style. God bless you. But of course, as barbers, when we see contrast from skin to hair, we like to have that fade.
I get it. And I trimmed it down. I was like, I know I'm going to see him. So I was like, I did a 3 right in the middle of my ear, and then I did like a 1 because it's not a bad. I like the natural look.
Sure.
I'm like a lumberjack.
You got it.
But I was like, I guarantee that probably bothers.
A little bit.
All right, Jay. So you moved to a bigger facility, 3 times the size of your old facility. It's growing. Are you hiring more barbers?
Yes, we are seeking experienced barbers. This is an opportunity for them to advance in their career. So someone that has been doing this for, a little while now, and they've realized that wherever they are, the shop that they're in is just not producing what they need to survive. To those applicants, we guarantee that we will keep their chair busy all the time. We have thousands and thousands of customers that they trust us as a brand, and they know that if you're working here, it's for a reason. We're very selective of the barbers that we put on. So those barbers, I guarantee clientele, flexible schedule, and a great atmosphere with a great team.
And a dope spot.
That's right. That's right.
This place is incredible. One of the nicest barbershops I've ever been to. It really is.
We're always looking for apprentices, someone that wants to learn the trade.
You want more of like a newer person, right?
Yes.
Not someone who's established who already has a bunch of clientele to bring in their, like, say they're like, I don't want to bring, like, they don't want to pay rent, or maybe they just have some personal shit going on. And if they already have a bunch of clientele, do you want them coming here or no?
Not necessarily. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that in a good way. I'm saying that in terms of flexibility. I need people that can cut hair. They're trustworthy. Their responsibility here is limited. What I mean by that, they're not responsible of really maintaining any type of space. We do that for you, and really not responsible for drumming up business. So it's almost like, compared to, say, Uber, for example. Yeah. I think the reason Uber is attractive to some drivers is the responsibility is limited. They don't have to really drum up any business. Kind of same with us. They have to come, bring your clippers, keep your stuff clean, and we'll make sure somebody is in your chair.
That's great. I mean, that takes a lot of pressure off most people.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
100%.
just show up, come do your skill, and bang out the haircuts, have a smile, and make money.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And I think flexibility is very important for people nowadays.
How would somebody apply?
You can apply online. That's the best way on our website. Yeah, go on there. There's a section that says become a barber. And then you just check off if you're an experienced barber or an apprentice.
Do you, just curious, do you make them do a cut in front of you, or do you make them send you like footage of their haircuts or pictures?
So good question. No, it's not like a test run. Usually if they're a licensed barber, of course I keep my eye on them, you know, at first just to kind of get a feel, as any coach would, you know, coach their players. They're going to watch. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. So I kind of keep an eye on those things just to earn, lack of a better term, that trust. Not only so I trust the product that they're putting out, but also I have to earn their trust also. So to answer your question, that it's not required.
Makes sense. And another question, do they need to know how to use scissors?
Yeah, nowadays most haircuts are scissor haircuts versus when I started out years ago. One of the trends was everybody got buzz cuts, real short haircuts on top. Scissor cuts are back for sure. Length on top, fade on the sides. So yes, that would be a requirement. And if it's something they consider that a weakness of theirs, that's something that we can help them. We offer a lot of training and continued education in terms of the methodology for barbering.
And that's all included. They don't have to pay for anything. You'll just train them because they're on your Jay's team.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely correct. That's one of the things as compared to a conventional barber school where you're required to pay tuition. We don't charge any. Not only do we not charge tuition, we will have them earning commission as soon as possible. So they're essentially getting paid to learn. It's a paid internship essentially.
That's so rare. Very rarely do you hear of a barber school where they're actually getting paid to learn versus them paying a bunch of money doing the time. You know what I mean? It's a big deal.
Oh, it's great. I have a lot of experience with that. I was an apprentice myself when I started out at 19. So it was great to experience that process and then be able to replicate that process, you know, and create opportunities. And it's very gratifying seeing someone that literally does not know how to turn on clippers, and then we invest time with each other and seeing them take those steps and grow, and it happens very quickly.
Is there in regards to new barbers, is there anything you're looking for when, let's say there's an opening for an apprenticeship? Is there a specific trait you're looking for, or do you just want someone who's willing to learn?
No, there's absolutely a trait, and that trait is called attitude. Good, positive attitude. I've said it for years. I'd rather have someone with zero ability to cut hair. I can train you how to cut hair. I cannot train you to have a good attitude. So positive attitude, definitely a requirement for sure.
It makes such a big difference. I mean, in life in general and in business, obviously, everybody's got problems, right? We all have problems. But when you go to get your haircut, you don't want to be around someone grumpy. Yeah. You don't want to be around someone who's pushing all their problems on you. You're just going to get a haircut. You want to have fun. You want to have a good conversation.
That's correct. From the customer perspective, not to mention from the team perspective, you know, your fellow barbers, they don't want to be mixed up with that either. You know, there's always going to be that one negative attitude, somebody over on the side kicking rocks, and that attitude tends to spread, you know, to others. So yes, you're right. You're right about that. 100%.
When you feel like you're having an attitude, you change your attitude to gratitude, and you'll feel a lot better.
That's correct.
You know, if you just think about all the things you're grateful for, even if if you're in a bad situation, you're going to feel a lot better if you're like, hey, well, at least I got X, Y, Z, you know, I'm not homeless, whatever the case might be, you're going to feel a lot better.
Yeah, I agree with that. Attitude truly determines the result of life's experiences. 100%.
So you are hiring anybody out there who is an experienced barber. You want to come to Jay's Barbershop, the nicest barbershop in Delaware. In my opinion, I've been to quite a few. This is by far the nicest barbershop. Apply ASAP. He'll get you on board, or he'll try you out. You know, at least give you an interview, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. So experienced barbers out there, this is a great opportunity to advance in your career. You've invested in yourself at this point. Come get a return on your investment. Come apply. JaysBarbershopDE.com.
I also kind of, because I'm here at your barbershop, I want people to kind of know what I do, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
I kind of want to just, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Joey Cyani, on Instagram, Joey Dots, and I own Delaware SMP. And my shop is about 100 yards away from here. So I watched the whole thing kind of get built, and then I've walked over here. I met Jay, met some of the guys, like I said earlier. And so if you're struggling with hair loss, right? So say you're coming in, you're trying to get a special kind of haircut to kind of mask the thinning hair, come hit me up. I can make your hair look a lot thicker and fuller with scalp micropigmentation. And then when you come to get a haircut, it's a lot easier. You don't have to shave your head. You do not have to shave your head to get scalp micropigmentation. If it's thinning on top, I can add density, make it look a lot thicker and fuller, and you can still get your hair cut.
Yeah.
Just want to put that out there.
Yeah, and that's right. And we've been noticing this. How long have they been offering these types of services?
Technically, it's been around for 15 years, but really the past 10 years, it's really taken off. And if you really want to get crazy, I'd say the past 6-7 years, big uptick in SMP.
I agree. That's when I started becoming aware of it, you know, and it looks great.
Yeah, I mean, you see it on my head.
Yeah.
And I still come to get my beard trimmed up. Obviously, I don't really need, but if I'm here, if I didn't cut my hair that day, I'll have them cut my hair. I like to treat myself. Who doesn't like to go to a barbershop?
That's right.
All right, so let's get into it. So what does the J in Jay's Barbershop stand for?
Okay, so the J and J's Barbershop stands for my first name, which is Justin. I got tired of growing up. Everybody called me Jason all the time. Not that Jason is not a great name. It is. It's just not my name. So going into business, I just wanted something just clean, just simple. I wanted the focus to be on the word barbershop. If somebody has 2 seconds to drive past a place, I didn't want some big, elaborate, drawn out name. I just wanted just a quick, simple J's and then just barbershop, just nice and clean, straight to the point.
So maybe I misunderstood. Did you say your name is Justin, but they called you Jason?
Correct. Yes. So anyone out there whose name is Justin, you may have had the same problem I have growing up. People would always call you Jason, and it became a huge pet peeve of mine. So I said, you know what? I'm going to eliminate that option from people. Just going to call it J's, keep it nice and simple. And so far, it's worked out. I only get called Jason about 4 times a day as opposed to 10 times a day now. So it worked out well.
I never heard that. I guess it's because it starts with the J and ends with an N. They both start with J's and N's.
Yeah, I guess. Sometimes I ask people with the name Jason, I say, hey, do people accidentally call you Justin? They look at me, they're like, nah. And I'm like, cool.
I had never heard that before. Okay. How old are you?
41.
40.
Yes, sir.
41. And are you married? Do you have any kids?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Married, two kids, 2 girls. Okay. Love them to death. Wouldn't change it.
How old?
Oldest is 14. Youngest is 9.
Okay.
Yep. Keeping us busy.
Did you grow up in Delaware?
Oh, yeah. Elsmere.
Elsmere?
Yes, sir.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to AI High School.
Okay. So you're a local guy, Jay. So you went to AI.
Yes, sir.
And what year did you graduate?
I was class of 02.
And so I was 05. So you were a senior when I was a freshman.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I left a little early. I was class of 02. I left a little early.
Okay. Did you play any sports in high school?
I grew up playing soccer. Once I got into high school, I focused more on the arts, skateboarding, music, started getting into barbering when I was in high school, about 14 years old. So I was always drawn to, we'll say, more creative, a little more creative outlets, in my opinion.
How did you get into the barbering at 14 years old?
Good question. So my older sister, she's a hairdresser by trade. She's got 4 years on me. So growing up, there was always hair in my house. She was cutting hair. I always looked up to her as my older sister. So it's something that I identified with in terms of being around it all the time, but it didn't appeal to me as something, at least not the women's hairstyling aspect didn't appeal to me. It just wasn't masculine. So when I was a teenager, I got really interested in the haircuts at the time that were very popular, similar to the hairstyles that are starting to come back now. Everybody got tight fades. With the exception of back then, everything was clippers on top. People would get about 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch of hair on top. What really attracted me to it was some of the detail in these haircuts, the shape ups, just the transition from skin to, dark, longer hair on top. It really intrigued me. And at the time, had nothing to do with business, had nothing to do with money. I would see people with these haircuts I admired, and it was just an ability. I wanted to have the ability to create that piece of art in a sense. So it really compelled me to.
So how did you start? Like, for example, I started because I've been cutting hair since I was like 14 too. But I was shaving stuffed animals.
Okay. So it's funny. When I first started, first of all, let me apologize to anyone who I may have given a questionable haircut to when I was a teenager. But usually when it starts, first place you go, you try to recruit your friends and family. God bless them. You know, they're your first victims. So, and you use the resources you have to you at the time. So it's going to be a pair of, clippers that are not industrial commercial grade clippers. Half the time they're probably going to snag hair.
Got that thing at Walmart.
That's right. Shout out Walmart. So, you start out like that. You try to, anybody that will give you that opportunity. And I remember clear to this day, I still talk about this to my apprentices. I remember carrying around a plastic grocery bag. I had a couple sets of clippers in there, and I would basically beg people. I say, yo, man, like, let me cut your hair. I'll give you a free cut. A couple of my friends in the very beginning, I promised them, hey, free cuts for life if you let me, cut your hair. Of course, that changed after about 2-3 haircuts. They were getting the better end of the deal, so I had to renege on.
You were getting better.
That's correct.
And did you ever end up cutting any of your family members?
Yes. So ironically enough, even though we specialize in men's styled haircuts, I remember even one of the very first haircuts I did was my wife now. She wasn't my wife at the time. This was going back. We were, 15 years old. I think I was 14. I think she was 16, something like that. And I remember destroying her hair to the point where my older sister, she had to come in and salvage it. But yeah.
What were you trying to do, like a little trim?
Yeah, little trim turned into a big trim. But
so you've known your wife since you were 15?
I've known my wife since I was 12 years old.
Holy.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How did that happen?
Well, and it's funny you ask because I actually, when I was 12 years old, I went over my friend's house, skateboard, stuff like that. I went to hang out with him. My wife, of course, was not my wife at the time. She was over there hanging out with his older sister. Ironically enough, the mutual friend that we had, the boy that was my age, he ended up becoming a barber also. And that's something that he was one of my first haircuts.
Okay.
But yeah, mutual friends at a young age. And
did you start dating? Like, when did you start dating?
Yeah, dated off and on. It was probably between ages 12 and it was kind of an off and on thing. Off and on between 12 and 14. And then between ages, when I turned 16 is, we got real serious and I've been with her ever since. I'm 41 now. And that was ever since age 16.
Wow.
Consistently. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
So rare to hear somebody's been with, basically your pre-high school sweetheart.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I hope you guys make it another 100 years.
Thank you so much, man. It's been great. She's been with me every step of the way. She was with me before I started cutting hair and couldn't do without her. Very supportive.
Now, is she a stylist?
She's not. Yeah.
You don't really need to be, right? I mean,
it's not. That's right. And it's not for everybody. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, it's tough. I mean, I cut hair now kind of consistently, but most of the time I'm shaving heads. But I could do fades, like I kind of told you, but I'm not very good with scissors.
Sure.
But I've done, like, my mom cut it, right across type thing, trim it off like a couple inches, stuff like that. But man, a lot of respect to you being with someone for so long and her watching you grow. I mean, obviously, where did you first get training and then start working? Because you obviously weren't making the money you're making now.
That's right. Correct. So starting out, it starts out, like you say, you basically solicit to your friends and family. That's where it starts. I first got some of my formal training. I was about 19 years old. The gentleman cutting my hair at the time, he was starting a barbershop, and I basically pleaded with him. I said, dude, I just want to learn how to cut hair. It has nothing to do with money. It's just an ability that I'd like to have, and I would do whatever it takes, whatever whatever you need me to do, I'll do. So he took me on at age 19. It was a good opportunity. It was over, the first shop I worked at was on Lincoln Street in Little Italy. Learned a lot there, and I wouldn't have changed it for anything.
Are you willing to share who kind of trained you?
Yeah. So the shop, it was called Barbershop. It was located on 8th and Lincoln. Joe Strano.
Okay.
So at the time, I believe he was about 23 at the time. He had a few years on me. I was 19, and started. It was his shop, but in terms of the original group of barbers there, it was himself, and then it brought me on, and it was a good experience.
Shout out to Joe Strano. I know Joe.
Yeah.
I know Matt.
Okay. Yeah.
Shout out to Joe and Matt.
That's right.
So Joe was your trainer. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then how long did you work there before you kind of decided to open up your own spot?
So I worked in that shop about a year and a half. It ended up, just kind of just needed a little change, so went from there to, after that, I worked at a shop in Elsmere on Kirkwood Highway, Mark's Barbershop. Worked there for a few years. From there, let me think, I was in Little Italy from 2003, I want to say, to 2004, then worked over in Mark's Barbershop in Elsmere from 2004 to about 2007. And that's when I ventured out on my own.
So 2007.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow. And that was your shop before this shop, the one that you had?
That's correct. So the shop before this one was my first place, opened there 2007. It was located on Old Capitol Trail in Marshallton. I started there by myself and, proceeded to just train guys. And by the time we outgrew that place, essentially left there, I think we were up to about 7 barbers. We needed more space, and kind of hit that wall where I had a decision to make. I said, hey, I could kind of, ride this out, which wouldn't have been a bad decision. We did well there. That place was successful. We made it work. But my biggest thing was I was running out of territory to train barbers. So that's my biggest thing nowadays is, I like to train barbers and add to our team. And I was limited in space to do that.
Like the size of the facility?
Correct. That place, it was about 800 square feet. So we moved everyone and everything over to this place. And now I think we're just shy of 2,500 square feet. So we about tripled the space. And I believe we utilized it fairly well. We got 12 chairs and we're still growing. So feeling good.
12 chairs is amazing. I mean, it's a lot of barbers, a lot of haircuts, going simultaneously. I mean, going from 800 square feet to going to 2,500 square feet is a big deal.
I'll put it this way. We appreciate the breathing room we have now. In fact, you mentioned earlier the open concept that we have here. Some people, they walk in and they notice that there's some space that doesn't seem utilized. And they say, hey, are you trying to, you should fill this space. You should put this here. You should put a pool table here. And my response to them is I say, look, we were working on top of each other for as long as we were. We love having just this extra space. We're enjoying it. Maybe it'll fill in a little bit, but we don't want to, we like that extra room for activities.
Yeah. I mean, now you can film podcasts in the middle.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And you can obviously do trainings. You can even have a little party here if you really wanted to.
Yeah. It would definitely be a good space for that, for sure.
Jay, so how does that all work? So if someone wants to become a barber, your kid, it's probably changed since you started. I don't know what it is now, but how does that process start? How many hours do you need to do before you're like an official licensed barber?
Okay. Yes. So the state does require 3,000 hours, which translates annually to about a year and a half if you're doing it full time. But with us, that doesn't mean that you're not on the floor cutting hair. Legally, we can sustain you under a supervisor's license. The supervisor then shows you formal ways to cut hair, and that's how the process begins. So we are very selective of the apprentices we take on. There's certain, like we mentioned before, attitude is a big thing. I like to spend a lot of one-on-one time with an apprentice versus, say, a hair school where you're paying tuition and then you're in there just with 20 or 30 other students. I like to invest one-on-one, and I think we've been successful with that. It gives me an opportunity really to develop a relationship with my barbers and really regulate the way they perform, in terms of quality and
And I've seen you in action. I've seen you in action in here training, when I bring my son in. And I've actually heard some horror stories because a lot of SMP artists are former barbers or still barbers, and then they start doing SMP for whatever reason. And a lot of them have told me, during their barber training, they're fighting for FaceTime with the trainee. Or with the trainer. They're fighting for FaceTime with the trainer, where you're saying, and they're paying money at the same time. You're saying the person, if they're hired here, they don't have to pay money. They're actually getting paid to learn, and they're getting plenty of FaceTime with you.
That's correct. And nothing against barber schools. I've referred to them in the past. I have recommended to certain people, they should look into hair schools. But I've also referred to, hair schools are for those that aren't fortunate enough to acquire an apprenticeship. If you know somebody that's willing to take you on, like you said, and train you one-on-one, that's going to be the best bang for your buck, and it's an investment on both ends, not just from the instructor. Of course, me as a supervisor, I'm investing my time with you, but I look at it as an investment, from the student, and like any other investment, you want to get the most bang for your buck, decrease your chances of failure and increase, the chances of success.
Yeah. And that makes total sense. When the person actually, let's say, hey, I'm Joey, I want to learn, I do my 3,000 hours. Do I then apply with the state for a license, or is that something you kind of handle? How does that work?
Yes, good question. So it is a state, there's a lot of correspondence between, our shop and the state. So yes, initially there is an application that, well, first they got to apply with us for our apprenticeship program. And if it's someone that we feel good about that we want to move forward with, there is a application required by the state. You do apply with the state. It's just general stuff. You have to have at least I think a 10th grade education or a GED or high school diploma. As long as you can meet that requirement, you don't have a criminal background, you apply with the state. And once you're approved and you have your apprenticeship license, legally, you can cut hair. You would be sustained under either myself or one of my licensed barbers' license, and from there you can legally cut hair. You can earn commission while you're learning, and it's enjoyable. It's a very stimulating way to make a living.
No, I mean, and you're helping people. People. If you do a good job, most people are happy, right? You give them a good haircut, people are like, fuck yeah, I feel awesome.
Yeah.
Some people are just, have you seen those things online where they're like, he wasn't happy or depressed, or he wasn't depressed, he just needed a haircut, and then they're all happy,
yes,
smiling. And
to your point, it's funny. So I mentioned this early on in the process to some of my apprentices. I say, yes, we're working with the public, which sometimes gets a negative rap. But in my opinion, we're working with the public, but they're at their best. They're choosing to be here. It's a way that they're pampering themselves. Not to mention, most people can act cool for 20 minutes, so if that makes any sense.
Yeah. They can be calm, chill out, and just kind of, no matter what's going on in your personal life, you come get a haircut, you kind of zone out for a little bit.
That's right.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's and you're right. They're treating themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, they're treating themselves. Do you have people that come in here weekly?
Not so much anymore. I'm sure there's a handful. Years ago when I was starting out, most of my friends, they would come every 2 weeks on average, which that now looking back, that's a little excessive. And
not as many skin fades, right? Anymore?
Yeah, no, it's a mixed bag. It's funny. We say this kind of sarcastically amongst us barbers. When we look at some of these haircuts, especially this younger generation that they're getting, it's almost like these combination, a hybrid of every haircut and hairstyle that I've come across in the past 23 years. It's almost like someone jumbled them all up, and it's a little bit of everything all at once. So it makes our job pretty interesting, but hey, as long as people are getting haircuts, we'll take it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I refer to them as the broccoli heads.
Yeah, broccoli head, that that's
we call a big one, right?
We call it the TikTok haircut. And I personally, I don't mind them because essentially what it is, it's that temple taper. It's the hair, it's tapered out to skin on both the temples and the back of the neck. That's something that's a style that was very popular when I started barbering. And
the blowout, right? I think they stole the blowout.
That's exactly correct. And it's funny, even nowadays, hearing some of the younger generation, they come in, they ask for a blowout. That wasn't a popular haircut, 20 some years ago. But like all styles, I think it always circles back, you know.
And it evolved a little bit, right? Because remember the blowout? I mean, like the Pauly D obviously blowout.
That's right.
You know, the pushed up, and now it's almost like people with straight hair, they get a perm, you know, to make it curly on top.
You're exactly right. So the method to cut it is similar in terms of its style, the way it's styled. You're absolutely right. Years ago, what we would call a blowout, it was still that taper on the temples, back of the neck, but they would literally blow dry it up. Like you mentioned, like Pauly D, of course, he had 50 pounds of product on top of it. Nowadays, similar haircut, but it's styled, it's pushed forward and messy rather than up. So it almost looks like, imagine the kid from the early 2000s where his is all blow dried up. Imagine, he got caught in a rainstorm and now his blowout is pushed down and it air dried for a little bit. So it's just the newer kids' way to put their stamp on it.
It would have been great for me when I was balding before I got SMP because it would have hide my receding hairline better. You know what I mean?
That's right.
You put that big ass thing right
there. Yeah, exactly correct.
I want to circle back a little bit. So when you were growing up, I mean, were you a good kid, bad kid?
I was ornery. We'll say that. We won't say good or bad. And not to stereotype, most barbers, but honestly, I think I kind of felt in line with what I noticed a lot, especially training guys. I noticed that we don't have a history of being very, academic, interested in a lot of academics. Me personally, I was the same way. I wasn't, didn't enjoy school per se.
Book work. You're referring to book work.
Book work. Yeah, correct. And, God bless, I encourage everyone to continue school. It's, even though it's not for everyone. Me specifically, I did what I had to do, but I knew I was going to, get into some type of trade rather than the academic route. At
least you knew early on. I mean, and I don't think in regards to, I know what you mean by barbers get stereotyped as like not good at book work, but is that really a way to measure intelligence? I've thought about this a lot lately. I don't think it is, because I know plenty of people who are book smart, but if you give them pretty much most regular tasks, they can't do it. They're really smart with books and maybe numbers or writing, or maybe their grammar's perfect, whatever the case might be, but maybe they can't fix something at their house. They can't give a haircut. They don't have an eye for style. You know what I mean? Even just coordinating the clothes that they're wearing, things like that. Or they're very unorthodox. I've noticed. So I don't know how to properly measure intelligence, but what I will say is, if you're a good barber, you probably have a good eye for detail, and you probably can notice things that I would say someone who's typically book smart probably won't notice, like in a room.
I agree with you. Yeah, it's funny how the brain works and how people tend to stereotype most of the time to make themselves feel better. But to your point, in terms of measuring intelligence, is it by the person that can memorize the most paragraphs in the science book? Are they now deemed the most intelligent? To your point, doing a lot of thinking of this, about this over the years, and I think one of the biggest defining characteristics of intelligence is recognizing patterns. And it's funny, I was having a similar conversation with my wife earlier today, and using myself as an example, I didn't do good in terms of studying books, but I study, and anyone that knows me knows this. They'll catch me just staring at something. And a lot of it is, seeking a pattern, and trying to come up with a rate, and even more so applying it to business. Most business, in my opinion, especially service industry, it's studying human behavior.
Exactly.
What's going to compel people? Coming up with, I hate to use one of the buzzwords because it's so popular now. Oh, algorithm. Yeah. But in reality, it's literally observing something, coming up with a pattern, and being able to predict, hey, I've noticed, this person with this similar type of behavior, they tend to respond this way or that way. In my opinion, I think that's a form of being intelligent. One analogy I use for my wife in terms of studying and observing and coming up with a rate and deciding when to take action I can use a million analogies, but one I like to use is if you see these kids, they're jumping rope, say double Dutch. Well, notice the person that's going to be doing the jump roping, they don't just jump in there. They spend a minute watching and studying the rate in which that jump rope is moving. They pick the perfect moment, and then they jump in there, and they're basically corresponding with the rhythm of whatever that apparatus is, or it happens to be a jump rope at that point, but sure.
I agree. And I think a lot of people, in terms of the pattern recognition you were talking about, I think a lot of people who do have the ability for pattern recognition are able to watch somebody do something. And then if they watch it enough times, they can do it on their own. Whereas a lot of people who I've seen who are book smart, they can watch it do it 100 times. They still seem to not be able to pick it up as quickly, I'll say.
Yeah. I'll agree with you 100%. A lot of that has to go into it. Not to mention, you hear the expression, what is it? Obsession. Obsession beats talent. Any day of the week, and I'll put myself in that category where things don't come easily to me. I have to work very, very hard for anything I've achieved, but I think it's just about obsessing, being very passionate and obsessing over everything, just not giving up.
I completely agree. I mean, if you're persistent and you're consistent, you'll eventually hit the target.
Sure.
Because most other people are just going to give up.
That's correct.
You got to want it though.
Mm-hmm.
I always ask people, even people who want to learn SMP, why do you want to learn? Well, because I want to know why. If your reason is I want to make money, I mean, that's a good reason, but what else?
Sure.
Do you want to help people? That's really the answer I'm looking for is I want to help people. I want to change lives.
Yeah.
And then obviously getting paid for it. It's fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people in here, when you're cutting hair, you guys have fun.
Oh, dude. Yeah. It's great. When I say it, it sounds like I'm being sarcastic because when I mention it, most people giggle, but I say, yo, man, like I've been hiding out from the real world in barbershops from the past 20 some years. And they look at me and they're like, with this kind of like, first they giggle and then they look kind of confused. And I'm like, nah, seriously, man. Like we have such a, we'll say a lifestyle where we're very, very fortunate, man. Again, we're in the service industry, but it's filtered in a sense. People they're concerned about what we and others think about them. So it's an opportunity for them to come in and be at their best and we love it, man. It's great. Wouldn't change it.
I like what you said about hanging out or hiding from the real world, because in here, you're in the real world, but you're in like a little community. You know what I mean? And people, everyone's doing the same thing and they can let their guard down. They say, well, maybe I want to try this or I want to do this. And they know they're going to probably end up looking better when they leave than they did when they came in.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%.
In terms of, so you're hiring and, this place is a pretty big place. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. The rent's got to be expensive, right? So do you charge, like when your barber's in here, you charge to rent the chair or do you take a portion of each of sale? How does that kind of work for someone?
Great question. So we are a commission shop versus say a chair rent, and nothing against the chair rental model per se. But with that chair rent, I imagine comes responsibility from that booth renter or barber or chair renter, however you want to describe it. So with that chair rent, they're literally providing you a chair. That's it. At the end of the week, hey, I don't care how many haircuts you did, give me my money, that type of thing. And my theory is there's going to be lack of congruency there where the tenant, they're either feeling like they're paying more for what they're getting or vice versa, or the shop owner who's in the business to rent these chairs out, not so much in the business to sell haircuts, but to rent this space out, they're going to feel like, oh man, like I just watched, dude do, 100 haircuts this week and I'm not getting, my piece. With commission, it's beautiful because mathematics, when you're dealing with percentages, it's tit for tat. It's congruent. No one's getting over on the other, if that makes any sense. Not to mention, I provide my barbers with all the clientele they need. So they don't need to worry about any marketing, any drumming up business. I think what happens nowadays is, people, they go to hair school or they decide, they want to be a barber. They want to learn how to cut hair. So they learn that craft, and now they realize that, yeah, I know how to cut hair. That's half the battle, but I need people who will be willing to let me cut their hair. So now they're trying to earn all these customers. Now, guess what? Now you're in the advertising business, you're in the promotion business, and that's not for everyone. That I've decided that that's for me. That's what I do. I like to promote. I like to advertise. I like to, keep the chairs busy. But in terms of expecting my guys, to do that, that's a task that they shouldn't have to burden themselves with. So yeah,
that's a huge relief. I mean, the most of my money spent in regards to S&P is all marketing.
Sure.
Most of it, is getting the word out there and letting people, hey, no, this service is available. But I mean, you got a beautiful setup. You're off the side of the major highway, and you got a really nice shop. You got the signs and everything. So I mean, if they did have to pay for marketing, trust me, you're going to lose a lot more of your money.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, everybody now, they watch, haircuts on YouTube and social media, and they think it's as easy as once they learn how to do, a haircut, that the people are just going to flock through their doors. And that's not the case. So that's something that we provide. Say you're an experienced barber and you decide to come work with us. That's one thing you don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about drumming up business. Just worry about coming to work, keeping your stuff clean, interacting well with your fellow barbers, with your customers, be respectful, and I'll handle the rest. So I think that's been a big attraction. I think that's compelled, a lot of people to come to us is once they go out the first couple of years and they realize they're like, man, like I love cutting hair, but I need to make 1,000 customers before I'm making any money. With us, you don't have to do that. So I think that's our hook.
No, that's a big difference from, being out on your own, right? Because I guarantee you probably didn't ask every one of your barbers to give you money to take out a loan to renovate this place, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
That's a huge cost. Because if you want to start your own thing, I think people underestimate how much money it's really going to cost, how much stress it is. I know you got stress. I know how it is.
Oh yeah.
Especially when you got, 12 people? Yeah. So then you got those 12 people too you have to worry about.
I got a lot of people to keep happy. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
And my guys, they know it. I say it sometimes. I say, man, I got a lot of people to keep happy. I got 12 barbers to keep happy. I got thousands of customers to keep happy. And I also say, like, if there's any happiness left over after that, maybe I'll get a little bit of it. You know what I mean?
I'm sure you're happy. You just
That's right. So my whole theory, what employees in any industry, not just the barbering industry, what they look for is, I think they look for limited responsibility. They look for room to advance. They look for a good atmosphere. They look for tons of flexibility. If they need time off, it's very important that they know. And not only do they know they have time off, but it's encouraged, take time off, relax, mentally.
Speaking of that, what are your hours and what are your days off?
So Tuesday through Friday, we're open 8 to 6. Saturdays, we're open 8 to 3. And we're closed here Sundays and Mondays.
And you do walk-ins and appointments?
No, so we operate by appointment. Yeah. So and we've experienced, years ago, we used to do all walk-ins. I'd say for the past 5 years now, we've been strictly appointments. So was
that since COVID?
So that is actually what definitely solidified it for sure. Prior to that, we were experimenting with the appointment and more so specifically the online booking business model. We knew the industry was going to be venturing that way. So we started kind of playing around with it prior to 2020 as an additional service to our walk-ins. But after 2020, man, after COVID, it kind of mainstreamed it.
Okay. I noticed that. So when I still had hair and I would go get my hair cut, I'd have to sit there and wait. I hated waiting 45 minutes to an hour for a haircut. So I love that you can make an appointment here because I'm like, all right, my wife's going to drop my son off to me. All right, I'm going to set it for like 4:30 and then I just have to walk over here. And it's so easy. I know that pretty much maybe plus or minus 5 minutes, but that's not a big deal versus waiting 45 minutes.
That's right, man. And like you said, the key word is convenience. Yeah. And I think that is something that compels all of us nowadays as consumers, not just in the barbering industry, but it circles back to how we were saying earlier about studying human behavior and essentially being able to predict what compels them, what contributes to their decision making. And I think if you take a step back and you think about it, think about what contributes to your decision making. It's quality, convenience and availability. So those are kind of the ingredients to bake the cake. And just like baking a cake, if you only have 3 out of those 5 ingredients, guess what? You're not baking a cake, or you are, but it's not going to be good.
And I've seen people, I've drove by here at 7:00 in the morning. I think I've seen people in here cutting hair
Yeah.
extra early, you know, because people want to get a cut before they go to work. They're like, I can't miss a day of work if the person's willing to come in.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
correct.
like that flexibility. But what about, all right, let's say I got a 65-year-old dad and he doesn't feel like going on a computer, setting an appointment. Will you decline a walk-in?
So it's funny because we're very specific now that we're reluctant to use the word walk-in. We don't want to encourage someone to walk in and then they walk in and we don't have a spot for them because the spots were claimed essentially by appointments. So you used someone's father, say for an example, someone that may potentially not be computer savvy. They can call us. We will take an appointment over the phone. That's not a problem.
Okay.
The closest thing we'll do to a walk-in, which we're very adamant about saying we're appointment only because we don't want there to be any confusion. We don't want to encourage someone to walk in and we're booked full of appointments and then we have to send them away. So if someone happens to walk in and we have an opening, we will essentially give them an appointment in the moment. We'll say, hey, okay, cool. It's about 5 of 3. We'll give you a 3 o'clock appointment. You know, if you want to just sit tight, that's great. Or if you want to run out to your car and be back, you know, in time for the appointment, you know, that's not a problem.
Makes sense. It makes sense because obviously the people who've already scheduled, you know, you want to make sure when they come in, you're not already cutting somebody else's hair.
That's right. It's like making a reservation at a restaurant. Say you as the individual, say you make a 5 o'clock a reservation at a restaurant. It's that restaurant's responsibility. They better have a table for you when you get there.
Do you require a deposit?
No. And that's another thing. We don't require a deposit. So in terms of what the customer experiences when they book with us, my manager, Zach, and I, we use the term all the time. We give people a lot of wiggle room. And I think that contributes to the whole convenience aspect. We've just made it recently to where if somebody needs to reschedule, they can do it last minute. If they need to cancel, they can literally go on the website. If they have a 4 o'clock appointment and it's 3:59, they could go on their phone and just cancel at the push of a button. We don't penalize them. We don't charge them. Essentially, we give people appointments based on good faith that they're going to show up. And most of the time they do.
What if you got a repeat offender? You got no, I get it.
Yeah.
Because I don't like it when someone cancels an SMP appointment. You know, it's very frustrating.
That's correct. And it is frustrating. And there are those people out there and God bless them. We don't take it personal. And we've had to have this conversation with people that they'll make an appointment and they're essentially like a habitual no-show person.
Yeah.
So we do have a limit. You know, we'll tolerate it, you know, a couple times. And at some point we have to defend ourselves and we'll say, hey, you know, sorry, buddy, it's nothing personal, but you know, an analogy we use is imagine you had a sub shop and people are calling in, they're ordering subs. You're not taking any money from them and they're not coming to pick their subs up. At some point you got to tell me is, yo, buddy, I'm not making you subs anymore, you know?
No, I completely agree. I know you're not supposed to take it personal, but I end up taking it. Sometimes I take it personal.
Sure.
It depends. Like you're saying, repeat offenders and keep scheduling, especially if you do it the same day. You know, and then you get people with no call, no show. That's quite annoying, right?
And it happens. And the irony is, basically, I think what we're describing is in that scenario, there's a victim in that scenario. And like you said, if we're essentially fronting someone or service, we're holding a chair for them, we're blocking it so no one else can sit in it. And then here, this person that we were holding this chair for, they no-show you. Most people you would think would understand. They would say, oh, okay, cool. Well, I no-showed this guy a bunch of times. No wonder, you know, he's not accepting any appointments from me. He's got to have means to defend himself. But some people, they like to play that victim role. You know, here they no-show you. And at some point you gotta say, hey, buddy, I'm sorry. I got to defend myself. I can't take any more appointments from you. And then they feel like they're the victim, because they're, oh, well, I don't understand. Well, I like coming to your place.
Because you canceled 5 times in a row, jackass. That's why. That's 5 times I could have made money that I didn't make money that, during that time slot.
That's right.
I know it. Oh my. And I get it. Shit happens. Things come up, 1 or 2 times. And if they're really spread out, okay. Agreed. But if it's like almost every other time, no, bro. Go somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree. Things happen, like you said, every now and then something's going to happen. It happens, it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's easy to text on it. You can they don't have to deal with us. They can literally, if they know they're running late or if they're going to cancel, go on the app, hit the button. That's it.
You can do that? That makes it very convenient.
Yeah. It makes it super convenient. So they don't even have to interact with us, personally over the phone. They can just push a button. Resolved.
What do you think is what was one of your biggest challenges when getting started, opening your first barbershop and then opening this barbershop?
One of the biggest challenges, it took me, so when I first started, and I say this before, and again, my manager, Zach, he would hear me, preach this all the time. When you get a place and painting it is fun, having these ideas that run through your head are fun, getting an open sign, that's fun. I think in the back of your head, you're naive when you're starting out. And you think just because you turn on an open sign, people are going to do a U-turn in the middle of the highway and say, oh my God, and circle back and come to your place. So it wasn't long before I realized that there had to be a lot of work done outside of the confining walls of the barbershop, because otherwise you're just going to be sitting there, looking at empty chairs, so the hardest part was kind of coming to that realization. I think I was very naive when I got into it. And I think that was in my favor, because once that door closed, man, once you put those hours on the door, you got to be there, so it was almost like, not imprisoning, but it got real.
Yeah.
That type of thing. So that was the biggest thing. First of all, but moving over, making the move. There's always challenges, but really spending the time learning, coming up with a system, coming up with a projection, and then being able to apply those things and see that translate into growth. Very challenging. It's all challenging, but it's all very rewarding, and
you're talking in terms of you're getting a new space. It's 3 times as larger. Mm-hmm. It might be 5 times as much as your old rent. So sure. In terms of projection, you're like, all right, well, if I get this many chairs, I got to have this many people. How am I going to get the word out there that we moved, that we're open?
You're exactly right. And what happens is you leverage yourself into a position, and we'll compare this big shop versus the other one. The other one, it was small enough to where, God forbid, if I had to, be in there by myself cutting hair, I could physically do it enough to where I can pay my bills and still survive. Mm-hmm. When you come to a bigger place, now you realize I am 100% at the mercy of others.
You can't do enough hair unless you're charging like $400 a haircut.
That's correct. Not to mention, of course, you do the math and you come up with, your break even. You got to say, hey man, I need 6 barbers working full time just to break even. You know what I mean? And maybe anything over that translates to profit, type of deal. But, basic math, but sure, it's intimidating, man. And it's not for everyone. You got to devote your life to it, really, and you got to enjoy it, Yeah,
I'm sure you spend more than 40 hours, especially in the beginning, showing up. Now, because of the renovations here, mm-hmm. moving here, did you meet with someone? So you signed the contract. Do they do any of it for you? Do they at least put new flooring down, or how's that work?
No, usually, with commercial leases, it's on the tenant, so that's what I was saying in the beginning. And I have no regrets now, because this place, it really turned out how I envisioned. My style is, I really wanted to create an atmosphere I enjoy being in. So I could have probably done this in terms of cost, probably about half the cost I put into the place, but
wouldn't be as nice.
Yeah, it wouldn't be as nice. And I'm happy with it. I like it. It's an environment that, we exist in. So to answer your question, yeah, it's on the tenant, which is fine. I mean, by the time I, got into the bigger place, I knew what to expect, you know, and I knew that responsibility was on me, and I would do it over and over and over again. But the interesting interesting thing about this place, and of course I'm a little biased. It's almost like how a parent is biased about their kid. They think their kid's the best. They think their kid is, you know, I think this place is beautiful. I think it's the most beautiful place. I think when people walk in here, the way it looks versus the price we charge, we are still very reasonably priced. I mean, right now, our regular haircuts still start at $30. When you walk into this place, people are probably looking around and like, man, this is probably gonna be like a $50, $60 haircut. Now, we're priced, you know, regular haircuts start at $30, you know, so the model is low ticket, high volume, you know, so, and again, that circles back to, I need a lot of hands on deck, you know.
Is there a different price for kids?
Yeah. So kids haircut starts at, what's it, 28, Zach? Yeah, 28. Yeah. So,
and seniors?
Seniors were what, 25? Yeah, started 25.
And do you do typical women's haircut, meaning longer hair? Can you wash hair? You know, the little.
Okay. So it's funny you ask, and I like how you worded it, because you said women's
typical women with long hair.
Correct. So we got to be very careful, especially nowadays.
Nothing wrong with having short hair if you're a woman. I tattoo bald head women all the time. Right. Trust me.
So it's funny. So a common question that we receive in the barbershop is, hey, do you cut women's hair? We have to be very careful how we answer that question, because if we say we don't cut women's hair, of course, it discriminates, you know, against women. So what we will say is we do not specialize in women's styled haircuts. Yeah. We say we specialize in men's styled haircuts. So in other words, if you're a woman and if you're a female and you would like to have a man's styled haircut, we will gladly provide you with one. But there is a difference. Sometimes I think women think just because they have
what you mean is, if you're a woman and you want a short haircut.
Well, it's even better that you asked that, because sometimes it gets confused with some women. It's a short haircut, but it is a short woman's styled haircut. And some of the difference, in my opinion, it's around the edges. So it might be a short woman styled haircut. Usually the edges on those haircuts, it's going to be a little wispier.
Yeah,
the edges,
not like a clean break.
That's exactly correct. The edges aren't going to be as refined. So I think what happens is sometimes in the pursuit to save a buck, some of these women, they think, oh man, well, I got a short haircut. I should just go to a barbershop. But some of the differences are in the details. Some of the characteristics of those haircuts are a little softer. So again, if a female wants a man's styled haircut, you know, skin fade or like hard outlines around the ears, back of the neck, we will gladly provide them with one. But, you know, they might leave a little disappointed if they're walking in expecting like, you know, one of these pixie haircuts and they walk out and they might end up with like a, you know, a little more tapered look than I think they're looking for.
Well, at least you're being honest and you're being transparent. You know, you want to set the right expectation. This is what we can do for you. If you want something different, probably not the spot for you, right?
That's correct. Hey, if we sell pizza, you know, don't ask us for a taco. Like, yeah, some of the ingredients are the same, but we specialize in producing this product.
You see the advancements in technology, right? I'm sure you see, we were talking offline about all the cool apps and stuff that they have now. And you were also talking about how you want to get into the trades. I don't think, with all the cool stuff that AI and robots are doing, I don't think they're going to be taking barbershop jobs anytime soon. I think this is a safe career. If you're good at it and you're willing to learn, you put in the time and the effort and you become an amazing barber. I think it's going to last at least 20, 30, 40, 50 years, hopefully 100 years. You know, I don't ever want to get my beard trimmed by a robot. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. I hope you're correct about that. I do. And I see what you're saying. In business, we look at what are some of our potential threats, and we try to account for that, you know, and that's why they always say, you know, diversify. You don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. So as far as that stuff goes, who knows, man? I don't believe they're going to come out with that stuff. But regrettably, I will say that well, let's say this way. I would say that I will say that there won't ever be a market for that, even if they do come up with a robot that cuts hair. I think that I say that to kind of make myself feel better. And I think people, the consumer, would also say that, oh, I don't want a robot, cut my hair, this and that. But again, man, I think it's going to circle back to the convenience aspect. I think they're like how they say, oh, Mike Tyson has a saying, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Right. Zach knows I say this all the time in business. And I think it's true. I think the intention sometimes turns into situation, and situation is always going to, it's always going to win, versus intention. So I'll tell you what a bigger fear I have than say robots or AI or a drone doing a haircut. It's just good old fashioned supply and demand. And what I mean by that is if we look at history and we look at a timeline of barbering, the history of barbering, it's the trajectory of it's been pretty good, pretty stable, other than when you look back in the 1960s and the 70s when some of these longer hairstyles came in, the Beatles, music influenced styles. That was referred to as like kind of like the dark ages of barbering. And if my statistics are correct, I believe about 80% of barbershops went out of business at that time because there wasn't a demand, for
everybody was growing their hair out. I don't think we'll ever get back. I see why you might think that, or why that might be a concern or a possibility. But I think there's so many different, I see just like style, things come back, right? But it's always slightly altered. It's never perfect. You remember when everyone wore a 5X t-shirt?
That's right.
And 3X Now people wear baggy clothes again, but it's not the exact same.
Right.
Have you noticed that?
I agree.
It's big, but it's not a 5X t-shirt from the gas station.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, like how we were saying before, like even the hairstyles, like some of them, I've been doing this long enough now, it makes me feel old that haircuts that used to be in style when I started out then went out of style, and now it's been so long they're starting to come back into style, stuff like that. But absolutely, I agree with you.
In regards to the AI, do you have any predictions about, has AI helped barbering at all, or robots or anything?
In terms of helping the industry, it's funny, and I think a lot of us are sitting back and we're kind of observing this method. We all see like AI and technology coming in and changing, not necessarily or just our industry, but like every industry. And of course we have to question and be concerned is how is it going to affect us? How is it going to affect our industry? I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting. I have a couple theories in terms of the visual aspect of AI, which I think it's cool, but I think people also kind of see through it. I think it's interesting, but I think it's going to circle. I think what's going to gain value is still just humans.
I hope the human element's never gone. People also, you like to talk to your barber. I'm sure you guys have a bunch of conversations. Some you remember, some you forget. You learn about people's lives. I love the human element, the human interaction. I don't think most people ever want to. It's sometimes going to the barber. That's the only conversation they really have with a stranger, where they could talk about topics that are not work related. There's so many people who work from home, and I don't want to say they're hermits, but I have friends like this. I used to work for JP Morgan before I did what I do now. And I just know, a lot of people are loners. And so going to the barbershop is a big thing for them. And I hope that's never taken away. I really don't.
I agree. I think it's something that, it's such a primal thing too. Like people have historically, gotten their haircuts for so long. I have a lot of theories in terms of just society. It's part of our culture. And then thinking back to study of human behavior, why do people get their haircut this way? And why does that guy get his haircut this way? And why do styles change? I think it's something that we've observed subconsciously as kids. Well, my dad had that haircut, or my uncle had that haircut, or the sports player I like had this haircut. And that has a lot of influence on us. And it's so funny, like we'll see a certain hairstyle, it'll start kind of slow, and we'll notice a couple people get it, and then we'll say to ourselves, like, man, like I wonder how big this haircut is going to get. For an example, a few years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, the undercut started coming back in, and the man bun and all that kind of stuff.
Skater cut?
Yeah, the skater cut. So it was so funny that stuff was very big back in the 90s, 80s and 90s. Then of course it got phased out. And, you know, when we were growing up, it was looked at as like, oh man, he's got a bowl cut, blah, blah, blah. And it was a negative thing. And nowadays you start to see, or eight years ago, this haircut started coming back. And it was funny, like, you know, but who can argue, hey, if there's a demand for it, it's art, you know, in a sense. And I think it's just influenced by, you know, the people you look up to, your role models on TV, sports, you know, that kind of stuff.
I have an idea for a future weird haircut. What if kids started like kind of, I say kids like teenagers and stuff, they start combing their hair forward, like grow it out, and then you kind of boxed it out, like almost like a wig, you know, and it was like really like the bangs are kind of high and then crisped all over here. And it's just like really, you let it grow real long, but then you just use the clippers to kind of edge it up around their whole head.
The Edgar haircut.
Similar. Yes. Very similar to the Edgar haircut.
It's called the Edgar haircut.
Yeah. But imagine all on the sides too, kind of like, you know.
The Edgar haircut. Yeah. We see it. And like I said, man, it's funny because nowadays I think anything goes. And I think that's,
you're right.
I think that's true with a lot of styles. Like even if you look at fashion, let's use hats just for example.
Yeah.
Early 2000s, it was only about a fitted hat. You couldn't wear a snapback. It was all about fitted, you know, but now it's like you'll see fitted hats, you'll see snapback, you'll see trucker hats. And I think the same things with
Bad hats.
That's right. And I think haircuts are kind of the same thing. Like when I started out doing haircuts, there were certain things that it was just taboo. Like everything had to be a nice soft fade, everything blended, nothing hung over the sides or anything like that. And I think it was basically the opposite from the generation prior to that, where everything was like an undercut, you know, long hair touching short hair and all that kind of stuff. Now you see a little bit of everything. You still see kind of like the undercut. People are still trying to hold on to that man bun. You're seeing, you know, the taper, which used to be the blowout years ago. They're getting that. Mullets are back. It's like, it's insane. It's like the Wild West out here.
You know what I think it is a big role is because hairstyles go hand in hand with kind of celebrities and music and pop culture, right? So I think now before you just listen to the radio and it was whatever they played and then you could buy the CD, the tape, whatever. Now there's just so many different styles of music and so many different people to look up to. The variation changes.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, man. That's true. But I will tell you one thing: if history repeats itself and styles come full circle, I'm ready for. I think we're due for like the early 2000s look to be coming back.
Dyeing your hair blonde, like Eminem.
Well, if you think about it, so we're in 2025 now. What was it, 10 years ago? Like the 80s stuff was cool. Nowadays, there's been like this like 90s revival. Yeah, I think. Yeah. I think we're going to be due for the 2000s, man. I think everybody should get a 2-in-1 with a shape up, 1/4 inch on top, 1/8 of an inch on the sides, and you know, shape up.
I had the spikes, you know, in the early 2000s, you know, just the gel, LA Looks put that in, you know, 2 on the sides and probably like an 8 on top, maybe a little bit longer. And then you just put that in there and then just spiky. And then I had the flip up and then eventually the messy look. Remember it evolved to the messy look.
That's right.
Yeah,
I think there was a movie, I think it was Jonah Hill, and he was referring to the haircut you described, and I think he had a little sun visor on, and they nominated him to like join their fraternity, and he asked him, he said, do I get the hair gel now, or do I have to wait for the hair gel? I think that's the picture that you put into my head.
I know. I can't, you know, now I've been bald for, I don't know, I guess since 2017 I shaved my head. It's like I can't even imagine wearing hair gel again.
Hey, bald is beautiful.
Yeah. I think if I could grow if I had hair, I would just do I'd want to have a slick back. I'd want to have it longer, a little longer, just because I haven't had it in so long.
Yeah. Well, I think you would accept anything that got thrown your way.
I will take any hair. I'll take it all.
But I'll tell you, not to cut you off, but I'll tell you, you rock it well. Some people, they can rock, you know, the shaved look. Some people cannot.
Yeah.
You look good.
My brother says I have a pit bull head. He said it helps. It helps.
Yeah.
Because you know, unfortunately, when you go bald, people see your whole head. So if you have a oddly shaped head, you know, doesn't always kind of transition well.
You have a very nice shaped head.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you. Speaking of, you know, I love. You have kids. I have kids. Do you want your kids to get into barbering or into styles?
Not at this barbershop. No, I'm not saying that in a bad way, but like you said, with your kids, you know, when you're trying to train someone, it all goes back to that attitude. And I love my kids to death, man, but not that nothing against this industry for them. Sure, this is a great industry. I would love to see them. It is a great industry. Me personally, I'd have some difficulty training my own children. I think if that makes any sense.
My son's not as coachable from me than someone else.
There you go. Yes, coachable. Yep.
I have a big fear, and I've talked about this a little bit. I have a fear that in 20, even 15, 20, 30 years, what jobs will be available for kids that are young now, 4 years old, 9 years old? What's going to be available? Because I think people are severely underestimating the power of artificial intelligence and these robots. I mean, I posted a video, a robot laying tile. I saw a robot doing fire extinguishing. You know what I mean? Yeah. I saw this guy. He was, an excavator, the big yellow thing. They're digging. Yeah. He's digging 100 miles away, like from a computer. But that way he doesn't have to be out in the heat, and he's controlling it. It's got all these cameras and stuff. Yeah. What's going to be available? Honestly, like what do you think is going to be available?
Yeah, now you're right, man. And you're right. And before so you described some, service industries where we're like, oh man, they'll be safe, and this and that. And it's going to be interesting, man. Who knows,
What are people going to do for money? That's my biggest concern. Most people are not born wealthy or have a bunch of money saved up. You might be able to help your kids a little bit, but they normally need to get a job. My goal, help them a little bit, but they still need to, they're gonna have bills, they're gonna have other expenses. What the heck are they gonna do for money?
Yeah. And I'm trying to think back historically, and I'm trying to think of some times that we could kind of compare, to
the Industrial Revolution, where they created a lot of factories, but we're not really creating factories.
That's correct. That's correct. And that's exactly what I was thinking. And with Industrial Revolution became mass production. I think that was, I don't think you can use the word Industrial Revolution with not referring to the fact that essentially that's what it did. It created ways that produce things for the masses, in high intervals, but
it was more humans were using machines. Do that, like the Chrysler plant that used to be.
That's exactly correct.
Right? The GM plant that's now a huge Amazon plant.
Yeah. So I almost wonder if we can compare those things, but
we're guinea pigs.
But look, I'll tell you what, if you look at the term Industrial Revolution, some of those industries already existed and it revolutionized them. So same thing. I think that's what we're doing. Like with this AI, notice we're not creating any new industries. They're essentially just revolutionizing the way that it's done. And I'm saying that, I'm not saying that in a good way or a bad thing, in a bad way. I'm saying it's going to be interesting, and hopefully we figure it out.
Yeah, no, I agree. One of my predictions, I like talking about, I like talking about the AI stuff because it fascinates me.
Sure.
One of my predictions for the future is, okay, you know how now, let's say someone broke into your shop, like you're at night, you're home, someone's like, well, there's a nice, maybe he's got a bunch of money in here, a bunch of tips laying around. They break in here, you call 911. I think normally a bunch of cars will come up. I think in the future, drones. Pops up, has a 360 camera looking at the scene, then the cops come. The scary part is, I don't know if you watch Black Mirror, what if these drones have guns, and then they can shoot at you? Or I went out on my back porch, my house backs up to the woods, I'm fortunate in that way, and I go out and I look up, and I know eventually I'm going to go out of my back door, I'm going to look up, and a freaking drone's going to pop up, scan my retina or something, some type of biometrics. I know it's going to happen in my life if I stay alive, next, say 50, 60 more years.
Yeah, man.
And I think drone technology is cool. I think it can help a lot of things, but I also kind of hate it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And whatever happened to, remember a couple months ago, there was all those like drone sightings. Remember that?
Yeah, they never gave an official story. If you want me to go on conspiracy. I mean, I heard a bunch of different things, but I'll say it. What I believe happened, they obviously knew they weren't China, all right? They weren't aliens. I think from everything I saw, it was some type of like petroleum or something was stolen that was related to like nuclear weapons. So they were just trying to find that nuclear weapon and then Because that's why wouldn't they shoot him down? Why wouldn't Trump or Biden shoot the shit down?
Yeah. So what you're saying is people did actually spot. So these drones were essentially maybe government. They were government.
They traced them back. They traced them back to like Lockheed and Martin. Yeah. So if you follow this guy, there's some guys get really into it. In their car, and they're like, got their phone out the window, and it went back to like a Lockheed Martin base. And some people said they were coming out of submarines. There's so many mixed stories, and what they do is they put in propaganda, like deliberate fake stories, so other real stories sound even crazier. I don't think we'll ever get the official story, but the one that makes sense to me is, it was happening over 30 days in a row.
Yeah.
Is that something related to nuclear? They were probably trying to find it.
Yeah.
Because why else would they just allow it to happen?
Yeah. And then of course, like when that was going on, the same person who always wanted to be included in stuff. Oh, I saw one over my house and this and that. And no, you didn't.
Oh, I had I have videos from my friends. I thought everyone thinks they see one. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was interesting though, but I just think there's going to be a lot more drones. Have you seen the China drone? Like they all move in sync. They can do in colors and do like, it's really amazing. It's really amazing.
Trippy.
Yeah. But I have a big fear of it because I just don't know. I don't think everybody in the future can be a YouTube influencer. Or I think what we're really going to move towards, more people are going to live in the virtual world, right? So if everyone's living in the virtual world, how are you going to pay for basic things you need, internet, food, all that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, man. It's definitely given people a false sense of survival in a sense. And there might be this alternate, reality or options, for a little while, but I think at some point, man, it's gotta, circle back. We got to create. I believe we're here to produce things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's got to be that balance. I think if everybody is just consuming and there's no production, who knows? I mean, it's
but what if the robots are doing all the producing? And we're just consuming. So I think we will get to the point where there's going to be a period where we all there's going to be fighting, right? There's going to be people against the resisting the change, the robots and all that. And they're like, no, we need humans. More humans need to do this. And then we'll get to the point where we should start treating robots like humans, right? Do robots have feelings? And then eventually we'll get to the point, it won't be in our lifetime, maybe in our grandkids, maybe even further down the way, where the robots and artificial intelligence will produce mass quantities of pretty much all the resources we need, that we won't really have to worry about anything. But here's the kicker. If you're not using your brain all the time because you're using ChatGPT or the robots are thinking for you, everyone's going to become dumber. And they're not going to be able to critically think, and it'll be easier to control. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe not. Because if you look at it, from the moon, let's say we're on the moon, you're looking down, you're like, who's causing all the damage? Who's killing everybody? Who's throwing trash in the ocean and starting crazy fires and doing all the damage? It's us. It's humans. We're doing the most bad stuff on Earth.
Yeah. And I hate to, but that's why you got to have faith, man, and not to get, too religious, but God, in my opinion, has a plan, and it's going to play out, and it's going to be interesting, man. But yeah, when you look back in terms of, we use the term produce rather than create. And I notice you use the term produce. They're going to continue to produce this stuff. And I use that as far as us as barbers, and not to take any credit away from what we do. I wish it was a lot more creative than it is. But I tell my guys, I say, man, we're not creating hairstyles. They're already created. We're just kind of producing hairstyles. So I'll use the same analogy for what we're describing, and we talked about the Industrial Revolution and stuff like that. And it's curious. We feel like we're being more productive now because we're coming up with alternate or different ways to do things. But a lot of it's technology that we've had. When you think about it, most of the stuff we do now, it's all video based or photo based, stuff like that. Well, that stuff was created, however many years ago, 100 years ago, but we've just come up with ways now to expand on that. In other words, if we look back at a timeline, 1,000 years in the future versus 1,000 years in the past, and we're measuring productivity, and it starts with the invention of the fire, the wheel, and all these really revolutionary things. Is what we're experiencing now even going to be a blip on that scale? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, cool. Like we think we're so like advanced now because, we have iPhones, which we use, technology, absolutely. But in the grand scheme of like civilization, is it all relevant? We're using it for some cute stuff. Oh man, oh cool. Like it made it look like this dog was doing this thing, but
the cat filter.
That's right. Oh, the cat filter is great, but was it really as good as like, something more like analog, creating a flashlight or something like a lighter,
or a flashlight.
Yeah, flashlight. That's right. So, so we'll see. It's going to be interesting, man.
I agree with you, and I hope whatever that plan is, I hope it's good for us.
Yeah, I mean,
clean up our act.
When you look at it, see, look at somebody that's 100 years old right now, and what they've experienced in their lifetime, all the gnarly stuff that has come about versus the next 100 years. I wonder, it's going to be interesting to compare those two things,
Interesting and scary. There's a lot of uncertainty with all of it, just because of the technology is moving so fast, and then they've made so many movies. I mean, Terminator's now like 40 years old, maybe.
Yeah, 1984. So yeah, 40. Yeah, 41 years old.
I mean, they've been warning us this stuff's gonna happen, but we still keep going towards it, right?
Yeah, I know. You're exactly right, and that's exactly what I was thinking of when you were describing, those scenarios where the robots, of course, come. It's like, oh, Terminator. Growing up, I grew up in that time period. Terminator was awesome.
I love Terminator 2,
dude. Terminator is my favorite movie, and I'm not just saying that because we're talking about this. Zach, Zach knows. Terminator, it's my favorite movie, dude. Yeah. And for a couple of reasons. I think the aesthetic of it's awesome. I think the concept of it is awesome. I think it was directed very well. I think it was, for its time, it was like cutting edge. But you're right, man. It's just one of those human things where even though we know we're kind of dabbling with something that should not be dabbled with, we can't help it because it feels productive. It feels stimulating, and I think one of the biggest human characteristics, in my opinion, is we're compelled to be stimulated. And I think it's because when we're being stimulated, it feels like we're being productive. And sometimes it's not. That's why we're sitting there, we're looking at our phones for hours because it's stimulating us. And at the end of it, we might feel like we did achieve something. It's like, nah, dude, it was an illusion.
That's a good point. I think it's probably because our brains never shut off. I mean, even when we go to sleep, we're dreaming.
Yeah.
Right? So your brain is always doing something. If you're like me, I've always got a million thoughts in my head. It's always constant. It's very hard, bad ADD. So it's hard for me to concentrate on.
Yeah,
on something.
I'm with you 100%, and I think that's something that you and I both kind of identify with. And I think we could probably detect it. A little bit. In each other.
I think most people who like you were talking about earlier, pattern recognition, and there are people who are good with their hands, they usually have ADHD. Because you get gifts from it, but there's also the downside of it as well.
Yeah. Yes. And of course, again, not to stereotype, barbers or, people in our industry, but of course I was, labeled that way. Everybody, watching and listening, like, oh, they know. But anyways, but you're right, man. If you can hone it, it can be a blessing, and a curse, but I wouldn't change it, Yeah,
I agree.
I feel bad for those around me. You know what I mean? They might want to change it.
Well, the best thing is to do is if you have bad ADHD or bad ADD, try to just get organized. The more organized you are, the better your life will be.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Just writing things down. I text things to myself all the time, and I use the notes section in my iPhone all the time, and it really helps me because I'm scattered brain. Dude, I can't help it. I can't help it.
You got to write it down. And it's funny. We recently lost a brilliant writer, David Lynch. I don't know if you're familiar with any of his work, but anyway, I was watching an interview on him, and I really liked an analogy that he used. And he said he would always carry around a notepad with him, and he describes certain thoughts like fish. You know what I mean? And you got to catch it when it's going across. In other words, you have to have that notepad, or like you said, with us nowadays, it's the Notes app. You have to jot it down when it's swimming past you, because if you don't, it's going to be going. You got to catch it like a fish, and you got to harness it. You know. So to your point, I agree with you.
I want to go back to the Terminator because I'm a big fan of Arnold. Did you see that the woman who wrote Terminator, she also wrote The Matrix, she said that it was the precursor to The Matrix?
No, that's not. Now let me ask you. So did she write the original? It was her and James Cameron that wrote the first one. Was her name Rachel something? Do you remember?
I forget. Young Jamie, Young Zach. Can you pull that up? Yeah, but So
she said that was a precursor. So maybe when as they were writing Terminator, she got the idea kind of for Matrix.
Yeah, that's what she said. I seen her just talking on it. I didn't go into too much detail about it. And I love the Matrix series. I love the Matrix series as well. I think I might like Jack, or what's it called? What's the new one with Keanu Reeves? Now I'm having a total brain fart. When he has the long hair.
Not John Wick.
Yeah, John Wick.
John Wick. Okay. Well, and it's also funny because we're talking about robots, and you also brought up the thing like, hey, what if somebody broke in and robots are going to come? I think on Amazon right now, it was a RoboCop documentary, and I think it's actually a series. There's like episodes, and what's it called? It's called like RoboDoc, documentary on RoboCop. But same thing. They were talking about some of the things that inspired that movie that came out in like. The movie was released in 1987, but I think they were leading up to something had an influence on it. But it just reminded me exactly like what you were saying about Matrix versus Terminator.
Did you figure out who wrote it?
Yeah, you got James Cameron and Gail and her.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I really do. I love that series,
dude.
I like Terminator 2 is definitely my favorite.
Okay, great film, and it's funny. So the first one I saw in the Terminator series was the second one, was Judgment Day.
Yeah,
and I think that's just the year it came out. I think it was like 1991. I think I was like 7 or 8 years old at the time, so I saw that one, and at the time I was like, oh man, it was great, and it is great. Since then, I gained more appreciation, man. I hate to say it, for the first one, just because it's just the story involved, the aesthetic of it. It's like it's like a dark setting and very industrial. If you listen to the music, in fact, as nerdy as this makes me sound, I did download the whole soundtrack. I have it on Spotify for the first one, and when you listen to that music, it really helps you picture the aesthetic of that film. In my opinion, that is it defines art. Even if you come across a piece of art that might not be your style, if you're able to pick up and perceive the message or the feeling that this artist was trying to portray in their art, I think they achieved their goal. And I see that with Terminator. It's like the music and it's awesome, especially for its time.
And they weren't really using CGI either.
No, yeah.
I appreciate that too. Most of it was like special effects and makeup and costume.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't really a lot of stuff. I hate actually watching how movies are made with like green screen because it kind of pisses me off. Because then when I watch it, I'm like, damn it, I kind of know how they did that, and I am fascinated with how they did it. But I also kind of pretend I like to zone out when I'm in a movie. Like I don't want to think. I just want to be in the moment in the movie.
Sure. And I think that it's probably part of our generation too, where we can kind of, we've experienced those things, so we can kind of see the seams in a sense. But I think also too, man, like we were talking about AI. I think, and when we hear AI now, like you said, it's being applied to so many things. The first thing it was all visual, on our phone. It's like, oh man, like they really made that guy look real. It looks almost real, but you can still detect that it's not. And then you write it off real quick. Once you're like, oh, it's AI. So you get kind of desensitized to it. And I think we've been experiencing that stuff for a generation now, where at first it was like Pixar. Remember, like the movie Cars, it looked like it was animated. You could tell it was animated.
Toy Story came out.
Yeah, Toy Story. Like you could tell it was animated, but it wasn't like the standard like drawing like the old like Disney movies. And I think they're both great. They both have their advantages, but there's also something genuine about the old drawings versus the computer stuff, in my opinion.
I agree. And I remember I was walking in a Kmart when N64 came out, in like what was that, 98, 97, something like that.
Yeah.
Because before it was just from left to right.
Right.
And then it's like you can go all over the map. And I was like, this is like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you first seen that?
Oh yeah, man. And you said N64, right?
Yeah.
So you can't say N64 without talking about James Bond, GoldenEye.
Yeah.
I mean, and that revolutionized the whole like
Best soundtrack ever.
what third person shooter games. Is that what, I don't think it invented that
job.
but it really like it made that awesome. Like I think that format came out with like there was a game Wolfenstein and Doom, which I think was a precursor.
Play Doom, don't they?
Yeah, they probably have a newer version. Yeah. But yeah, I think GoldenEye is what really, and I think it's because it brought it to a console that was in the home. I think like Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, I think it was limited to like computers, which is cool. If you had a computer, great.
Yeah.
But not every kid had a computer. They had a, Nintendo N64 or something like that. So it kind of like put that third person shooter games in the hands of them. And I think it revolutionized. Who knows?
Well, you could play with your friends, and you could play 4 people. Remember, you could only play 2 people on the Super Nintendo.
Well, that's right. And it makes me wonder, like, and I'll ask you, Zach, do you think there would be Call of Duty if there wasn't, that third person shooter back then? It kind of evolved.
But as far as Gail and her, there's no direct tie there. The Wachowski siblings made The Matrix.
You're full of shit.
No, we'll have to look that up. I'll
Fact check.
that. Yeah, we'll fact check.
Edit this out.
Yeah.
There's a UK guy on the website that's tying the universes together, but as far as like her production on it, it says just the Wachowskis for The Matrix and James Cameron and her for.
Yeah. Look
So-
up the
so
writer.
you're
Ask
saying-
ChatGPT. Who was the writer of the Terminator and the writer of the Matrix that it was based on, like the original writer?
So you're saying the writer was a female?
It was a black female.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Yeah.
Because I know James Cameron at least produced it, so he might not have written it.
Well, most of them don't write it.
Contribute.
I mean, yeah, they just take it and they bring it to life.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
when they do a book, they turn a book into a movie.
Yeah. But it's funny because Terminator 1 legit is my favorite movie, dude.
It's a great movie. What's the guy's name who plays the? Is it the T-100? He turns into like the liquid Capri Sun.
Yeah. So that was in the second one, Judgment Day. What is his first name? The actor.
He's in a. I watched a show called Jack Reacher. I love that show, and he's in it. He plays like a bad guy in it. He's great at playing a bad guy. Like I think after that, all of his roles were bad guy, but he's so good at it.
Yeah. Well, they would have to be after that role. Absolutely. But yeah, and I think I didn't recognize him from anything before Terminator. I think it must have been his debut.
What other movies you like?
Dude, so I consider myself a movie buff, although my range is limited. And it's limited to basically, I'd say early 80s to...
Horror, or is it sci-fi? What do you like?
Yeah. I like comedies. I like comedies, man. Yeah, something that I could put on and it makes me laugh, and it doesn't take, like how we talked about before, the whole like attention deficit thing.
Yeah.
It's tough for me to sit down and watch a movie that you really gotta like pay close attention to. I like to laugh, man. I like things to, and it's funny because versus the horror thing, I appreciate that stuff. And it's weird because, of course, I have this whole like dark aesthetic vibe. I have this, appreciation of, even like some of my music is kind of like, dark. But for some reason, like, I don't know, maybe in real life, I'm just the horror stuff. It kind of.
I'm not a big horror fan.
Yeah.
I'm not a big horror. I end up gravitating more. I love the sci-fi stuff because I pretend that the scenario is happening in real life and then I'm in that situation. I like a lot of the military war stuff too, but that's what I usually end up going to. I love anything with the aliens. I love The Walking Dead was one of my favorites.
Okay, yeah. Walking Dead. Now, do you like, in terms of zombie stuff, I love the movie Danny Boyle did, 28 Days Later.
Yeah, great movie. I think they're making another one now, aren't they? Or like a updated version or like a sequel. or something?
They might be. The original was great, and the style that he used was great because I think he introduced like those really fast walking zombies. They were almost running.
Yeah.
I think he kind of introduced that, but he's a great director, man. He did a lot of good stuff like in different genres. He did Train Spotting.
Yeah. That's a weird movie.
It is. He did the
Don't watch that, kids.
you know he did The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio. That was a good
That
one.
was really good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like The Beach. But did you find it?
So we got Sophia Stewart, who's an American writer, is playing The Matrix and The Terminator, which is off her 1981 script called The Third Eye.
Sophia Stewart is her name. Sophia Stewart. So pop that up on the screen.
So 1981, she wrote something called The Third Eye.
Took from that, filed a lawsuit against Warner Brothers in the early 2000s. It was dismissed in '05 due to lack of evidence and failure to respond to court orders.
Oh wow.
I mean, she should get paid. She should get paid for real. I mean, come on. Yeah, that's wild. People stealing ideas.
Yeah, dude.
And now that's why they had that writer's strike. Remember that writer's strike in Hollywood? Because you can ask ChatGPT right now to write you a script about a barbershop and they'll do it.
Yeah.
And they'll do it in like 20 seconds.
Yeah. It's insane. Well, yeah, and I mean that makes you. I agree with you, man. I think there's going to be just such an abundance of everything.
There's just too much shit to watch now. And listen, people tell me to watch shows all the time. I'm like, I can't. Like, when I do, I mean, you're a business owner and you have a family. When you go home, you got to do stuff for your kids, right? And then when your kids finally go to sleep and you finally got time to rest, it's like, what do you want to spend your time on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to probably gravitate towards what you traditionally like. You know, it's kind of hard to put something new in. Like, you don't have a lot of time. Like, am I going to like this? Do I really want to waste my time?
You are correct. And that's why a lot of times, and my wife complains all the time because I like to watch the same stuff over and over and over again. Because like you said, rather than invest in your time, you know, you sit down and watch a movie for 2 hours and you're like, dude, I didn't like it. Yeah. So something that you've seen, it's like, you know, it's reliable.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to identify with it.
Some people are against rewatching movies. I think if you haven't watched it in a long time, what difference? And I forget most of it, so it's new to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree, man. 100%.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I love movies and I love just zoning out. You know, I don't really play video games. I did when I was a kid, but I don't really play them anymore. But I love just not thinking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's a rare thing, like you were saying, nowadays, especially like, you know, the responsibilities that we have. Absolutely. That is a welcomed, you know, thing to be able to now be able to put in a position where you can turn your mind off, you know, it's the best to be in that level of just subconscious, you know, and I think that's, I think it's something as humans, we all appreciate.
So Jay, what do you want to we'll wrap this up. How can people find you? What's your website, Instagram, all that sort of thing?
Okay, so our website is jaysbarbershopde.com. Very easy to find. Our Instagram, I believe it's JS_barbershop_DE. Again, pretty easy to find.
And we'll tag all this in the comments, by the way.
Yeah. And I definitely want to, if I get a chance to, you know, attribute, you know, some of what I believe our success should be attributed to is, first of all, our team that we have here. We have a great team of skilled barbers. They're very, very talented. They're the nicest people you will ever meet. I guarantee that. So we've been very fortunate to create this chemistry, you know, amongst us. I think that contributes and translates to what our customers experience when they walk in here and they feel and it's genuine. So I think that has been a big part of our success and just the way we do things. We have a good system. We work as a team. Not only do we have a great team, but we all work together and I attribute it all to them, dude. Like in terms of a coach, yeah, a coach can come up with like good plays, but it takes the team to execute, you know? So I just want to take a moment just to thank those guys and thank my wife and kids and all that kind of stuff, because, you know, without their support, we wouldn't be here. Absolutely.
Agreed. I mean, having a strong team, having them execute, you know, you being the leader. I mean, you're doing a fantastic job. You're only growing. You're only getting better and stronger. So you're doing something right.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that. Thanks for noticing that.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for bringing me here. I love coming here and basically doing a podcast in person at your business. I feel honored. Thank you so much. I think it's an amazing place. I'm definitely going to keep coming and bringing my son and referring all my friends and family to come get their haircut at Jay's Barbershop on Kirkwood Highway, formerly a 7-Eleven, but now it's Jay's Barbershop.
That's correct. 5601 Kirkwood Highway, Wilmington, Delaware.
And what's the phone number?
302-998-3337.
And if people want to book an appointment, what do they do?
They book online, man. jaysbarbershopde.com. That's the best way to get on our schedule. Quality haircuts, convenience, and availability.